we'll continue talking about Rand Paul and the filibuster. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Thanks for staying with us through the break. We're talking about Rand Paul and the now infamous filibuster. Like I already mentioned, one of the more outspoken Hollywood liberals really stepped up on the issue, going on mostly Friday of last week. Actor John Cusack, who describes himself as progressive, but he's been very critical of the federal government's drone program, regardless of who's been in office. Frankly, he has also been pretty harsh critic of Obama's as well. Of course, in regard to Rand Paul and the other GOP senators' old school filibuster on the Senate floor, again, to attempt to block John Brennan's nomination and bring attention to the potential for drone strikes on U.S. soil. Again, you notice how this is being framed in the report. The filibuster was during the confirmation process, but Paul himself has said it wasn't about John Brennan. And that's part of the problem I have with this too. Yes, it was necessary to bring some attention, but why weren't we actually trying to stop John Brennan from becoming the CIA director? His appointment to this position is suspicious at best. At any rate, Cusack was curious to know, where are the Democrats? He sent out a series of tweets, everything from, for God's sakes, where are the Democrats? Rand Paul, Obama administration response drones, more than frightening, he also posted. Good question. Up to 8 senators now joining Rand Paul filibuster. So where are the so-called progressive Democrat senators? He even had one tweet that was longer than 140 characters, but here's what he wrote. AG says it's okay to kill U.S. citizens and other bad guys, but trust us, we're the good guys. How'd that play out through history, Mr. Holder? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The great and powerful O has spoken. Dems, do you have any thoughts on Obama's transition from progressive academic humanist to a regressive corporate warlord? Cusack also said, when you kill innocent people without trial, imprison them with no trial, what would you call it? Used Bush powers and extended them. Cusack also said the filibuster lasted almost 13 hours. Now that was the extent of the more notable tweets that Cusack put out there. If John Cusack realizes that this should be an American issue, not a Republican issue, not a conservative issue, but that Democrats should also be worked up about this, it makes me question, first of all, John, I don't think you realize who you're actually talking about, because the progressives, I mean, you described yourself as progressive. I think you're using the actual definition of the word progressive if you're going to describe yourself that way, and it just means that you think the government should do more for the people. Fair enough. Old school Democrats thought that way. Current Democrats, however, are not old school Democrats. And the so-called progressives, their agenda is to destroy the Constitution. This is part of their playbook. This is part of what they're working for, Mr. Cusack. I'm sorry to inform you, you've been supporting the wrong team if you believe in freedoms and liberty. Because the progressives, as they want you to call them, as they want you to think as them, the only progress they're interested in is getting past the constitutional limitations on government. For those of you who were curious and have not heard or haven't looked it up yet, there were a list of 13 Republicans that voted to confirm Brennan after the filibuster ended. Richard Burr of North Carolina, Dan Coates of Indiana, Tom Colburn of Oklahoma, Susan Collins, Bob Corker of Tennessee. Very surprising to me that Corker voted to put him in office. Makes me wonder what happened at that dinner with Obama. Jeff Flake of Arizona, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, another surprise to me. Orrin Hatch of Utah, not a surprise. Mark Kirk of Illinois, John McCain of Arizona, Marco Rubio of Florida, a little bit of a surprise, not as much as some of the others, but a little bit of a surprise that Mark Rubio did this. Lamar Alexander, other senator for this district here in Tennessee, surprised me that he voted for this as well, but not as much as the Bob Corker vote. And I think maybe Lamar just kind of followed suit with Bob on this one. And then, of course, last but not least, the rhino from Arkansas, Lisa Murkowski. 2 Democrats voted against Brennan. I think that's also newsworthy. Patrick Leahy and Senator Jeff Merkley. And then, of course, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, the lonely, outspoken Democrat that participated in the filibuster, later did vote to confirm Brennan. So, again, I guess he was standing up about the drone strikes, the same as the initial Rand Paul filibuster intent, as opposed to actually standing in opposition of John Brennan. John Brennan should not be our CIA director. He shouldn't be. Not until all the legitimate questions were asked. And I think every Republican on this list now has to be looked at with an eye of suspicion. Was this some type of concession that was made as a result of discussions and negotiations that took place at this magical, wonderful dinner with the O? I mean, it seems like the majority of people on this list were at that dinner. I have serious concerns when I see bona fide, legitimate conservatives who have carried the banner and been pretty eloquent at times at expressing the conservative values, like Lindsey Graham and Bob Corker and Marco Rubio. When you see these folks who have been up front, who have been part of real solutions that have been pushed to the side, I mean, you can't be surprised when you see Susan Collins. You can't be surprised when you see Lisa Murkowski. You know, Murkowski is a rhino. I think everyone knows that. Orrin Hatch has changed sides more often than Benedict Arnold. And, you know, whatever's most expedient for Orrin is what he's going to be at the moment. Susan Collins is, of course, from New England states, and most New England Republicans are more liberal than most Southern Democrats. So, you know, it's not too surprising when you see folks like that with an R at the end of their name voting the other way. Just like it's not a surprise to see John McCain, who I respect his service. I think he was a real American hero. I don't impeach his character at the time, but I do question his judgment now. I've been forced to question his judgment since seeing how he handled his presidential campaign. it's one thing to want to be able to reach across the aisle. It's another thing completely to capitulate. In the final few minutes of the show, I'm also going to talk about not the filibuster, but the overall issue that we can't help but face with the sequester. The fear tactics and the attempts to bring about the government Armageddon, they're still out here doing these campaigns. They're still trying to make it worse. They want you to believe it's a lot worse than it is, and they're specifically targeting programs that are going to upset you the most, or at least that's what they think. But I saw an article earlier about how the occupier's dog has a motorcade. If they can afford to run a full security detail and a motorcade for a dog, I think they probably could have kept the White House tours going a little longer. I think if he can still afford to go golfing with Tiger Woods, I think they probably can keep the national parks open. When you consider that the total amount of money that's part of the sequester still makes up less than 2.5% of the current allotted spending under previous allotments, you have to scratch your head and say, okay, why are you picking this? Why are you trying to make it painful? It's for political gain, baby. He, again, wants you, the American people, he wants us, the American people, to ask our congressmen and our representatives to help him raise our taxes some more. That's all that's about. And right now, I'm calling on Republican leadership, especially in the House, Mr. John Boehner, put an end to the continuing resolutions. We are at a point now where we are beyond fiscal crisis, and the only way our economy is going to be able to bounce back in any real fashion is if our government gets its own spending under control, and that's only going to happen one way. It starts with a budget. It starts with the basic premise that Newt Gingrich put into play when he was Speaker of the House and we had the contract with America. Bill Clinton gets credit for being president during one of the greatest economic times in American history, but he only got there because of the conservative leadership in the House, and Newt Gingrich made it happen. How? By proving he was serious. No continuing resolutions, government shutdowns. They shut the government down twice. Serious savings occurred, and real mandatory services that still needed to be available were kept operating. It would not be the end of the world if you had government shutdowns. Will it be uncomfortable for some folks? Yes. But unfortunately, we're past the point of having a painless fix. We've got to get things under control. So right now, John Boehner, stop with your continuing resolutions. Please, Democratic senators, stop with the continuing resolutions. Give us a budget. That's the only way we're going to get this under control. Only a budget will do. That's it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being part of the show. And I look forward to broadcasting again soon. Remember, don't take my word for it. Definitely don't take their word for it. Take a few minutes, do some research on your own. Use your brain. That's what you've got it for. And think for yourself. Have a great evening, everybody.